We left off with a question because we spoke about the I don't want to say the importance, but the fact that the basket plays a role in the bikurim. And when a person went and they gave their bikurim to the kohen, if the basket was not from expensive material, then it was naturally included. According to the Rambam, not only was it naturally included, it becomes part of the responsibility, part of the mitzvah of bikurim includes the basket. So we left off with the question, what's the lesson? Because everything is supposed to teach us a lesson. So what's the spiritual meaning of including the basket in the bikurim? So conceptually, I think everybody can acknowledge that what bikurim represent conceptually is something very special. Basically, what used to happen is a farmer would go into the field, he'd identify the first bud of the first fruit, and he'd have to tie a ribbon on it, and that's what he would then wait until it ripened and take as his bikurim to Jerusalem. Now, theoretically, there could be a lot of bikurim. Let's say that a person had an orchard and a field and different kinds of orchards. All the various fruits could be quite a lot of bikurim. But you can't just take anything to be bikurim. There are two very important qualifications. The first one is that bikurim are only from the 7 fruits of Israel: wheat, barley, dates, figs, pomegranates, grapes, olives. So that already tells you that besides the fact that bikurim are the first fruits, which already tells you that it's something special, it has to be the first of the special fruits. So that already tells you that the message of bikurim is you're giving a gift to the kohen that is something very special. But not only that, when you get into the detail of it, turns out that, let's say, for example, you wanted to bring dates as your bikurim, because it's one of the 7 fruits. So let's say you had date palms and you're going to bring bikurim. So the Gemara goes into the detail of where dates grow best. So certain fruits grow best in valleys, like grapes. Certain grow better on hilltops. Apparently dates are in that category. So if you were going to bring bikurim and you had 2 lots, one was in the valley and one was on the hillside, so you'd have to know which fruits are better from the valley and which fruits are better from the hillside. So not only are you bringing the best, because it's the blessed fruits of Israel, not only are you bringing the first out of those, but you have to bring them from the particular product that's going to be the best quality product. So whichever way you look at it, the bikurim represents something which is elite, something which is dignified, which is prestigious, which is special. So the irony is that when does the basket get included as part of the package? When the basket is the exact opposite of that. It's the least valuable. Because the range of baskets that we looked at was baskets that are made out of grass or reeds or whatever the case is. Then the Rambam said, the minute it's metal, you don't give the basket. And for sure, if it's gold and silver, you definitely don't give the basket. So the kohen is now going to end up getting the very best fruit from the very best species of fruit. But when did he get to keep the basket? Well, the basket is the very lowest kind of basket. Doesn't seem to match. You would expect that the whole thrust of the whole experience should all be about the best. So why is the basket only included as part of the bikurim if it is the lowest, cheapest basket? It seems a contradiction. So before we can answer that question, there's something we need to know about bikurim, besides the fact that it's fruit. And that is that there's a verse in the Tanakh where Hashem says that the Jewish people are like the first fruit. So besides the fact that you're actually bringing a gift to the Kohanim, and you're saying a declaration, and you're making a prayer, and you're asking Hashem for his brachas, etc. Besides all of that, the bikurim itself represent us. We're considered like Hashem's first fruit. Now, if the bikurim, as we've identified, have to be from the best of the best, then you'd expect that the way that we serve Hashem should also be from the best of the best. Which makes sense. Generally speaking, we're always told that you're supposed to do a mitzvah in the nicest way possible. So when you buy yourself a pair of tefillin, it's supposed to be the most beautiful pair of tefillin. And coming up at this time of the year, when you're going to buy an esrog, so that's for sure the one big deal that everybody makes, that you want to get the best kind of esrog, etc. Everything should be beautiful. Everything should be done at the highest level. But if you think about it, the highest level of us is our neshama. Obviously. If you want to say, what do we compare ourselves to Bikurim? We compare our neshama to Bikurim. Just like the Bikurim have to be from the 7 blessed species of Israel, and just like the Bikurim have to be from the best of the best, and just like the Bikurim have to be the first of those best of the best fruits, so the neshama would be the part of us that is the best of the best, that is the highest, that is, that's what it should be. It should be the neshama.
Just thought of something. And I don't want to steal anything from Gematria, but Bikur and Bachor being the first, it's the same root.
Correct, it's the same root. That's right. So they both convey the same message, which is about the first, etc. So now you've got to think, if Bikurim represent the neshama, and the neshama is supposed to be like the Bikurim, the best of the best, you would think that the way that we serve Hashem, where we use our neshama, that should be the highest, and that should be the most important part of how we serve Hashem. The question is, how do we serve Hashem using our neshama? Let's try and identify, in our experience, in our Judaism, what parts of our Judaism are much more of an expression of the soul than they are, let's say, of the body. Excuse me. Right? So what mitzvah, can you think of a mitzvah or mitzvahs that would be seen as an expression of the soul? Okay, let's do a little bit of process of elimination, right? I'll throw out a few mitzvahs just to illustrate what we're not looking for, and then we'll see if we can find what we are looking for. When a person gives tzedakah, is that a mitzvah that is done with the neshama, or is that a mitzvah that is done with the body? The body. In fact, the neshama can be fairly absent in that mitzvah. The main thing of tzedakah is to actually give the donation. That's how you fulfill the mitzvah. Okay, let's use another example. When a person wraps tefillin on their arm and places tefillin on their head, is that an act of the neshama, or is that an act of the body? The body. So what would be an example of a mitzvah that's very much an expression of the neshama?
Showing love, giving love.
Oh, there we go. So one of the key mitzvahs that we have is the mitzvah to love Hashem. So to love Hashem, that is a mitzvah that is done with the neshama. Because in order to be able to have love towards Hashem, you need that part of yourself that is a little bit removed from the physical to be able to have that connection to Hashem. So there you have it. The love of Hashem would be an example of a mitzvah that has to do with the neshama. Another example on exactly the same plane is fear of Hashem. To be able to be in a state of awe of Hashem's greatness, that is something which is precipitated by the neshama. So now if we had to compile a list, would you say most mitzvahs that we do are driven by the neshama or by the body? By the body, right? So if the Jewish people are considered like Hashem's Bikurim, and if we've been endowed with such a powerful neshama, every single morning in our prayers we speak about how powerful this neshama is. We say, neshama shenasata bi tohoirahi. The neshama that you put inside me is pure. Pure doesn't only mean that it's uncontaminated. The meaning of the word pure is also that it's the highest level of holiness. Not only that, but we have an expression we say, Chai Hashem Elokecha Shamati Lefanecha. That we talk about how the neshama lives specifically when it is close to Hashem. Meaning that when the neshama is in Gan Eden, and it doesn't have all the interference of the human body, that's really where the neshama has the most soul experience. But living inside a body, the neshama has been majorly downgraded and limited. So the neshama can't do all the neshama things living inside a body, because the body has limits. The body can only see certain things, can only understand certain things. The body gets tired, the body gets distracted. So the neshama is it's almost like crippled, living inside the body. So if you're going to talk about Bikurim, which are the highest, most beautiful, choicest gifts to Hashem, you would expect that where do you get the greatest gifts to Hashem? When the neshama is free of the body. That's what you'd expect. Judaism doesn't work that way. Because when a person leaves this world, when the neshama leaves the body, so yes, people use all kinds of expressions, and you've got to check whether those expressions are in fact valid or not. But people use expressions, say the person's in a better place. Now, that's what people always say. The person's now in a better place. So I have my own reservations about that statement, in a better place, because, so what are you saying? Did they not like being with us? Was that not good for them? They have to be in a better place, you know? But besides that, better place means that there's greater exposure to godliness, but there's absolutely zero opportunity for growth. Because the way that Hashem designed Judaism is that the only way that a neshama can grow is by doing a mitzvah or by learning Torah. And a person cannot do, a neshama cannot do a mitzvah. Even though neshamas can study Torah, but even the study of Torah that neshamas have is not the same experience of Torah study that we have. They don't have that same challenge of trying to understand and having to work it through, which for us is a big deal, and for the neshamas it's just kind of like smooth sailing. So the whole experience of propelling the neshama forward can only happen when you're in the body, which is a fascinating irony. But that's the reality. That's just how it is. You have to have the neshama in the body in order for the neshama to be able to progress. In fact, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya makes a very interesting observation. It's an absolutely mind-blowing observation. He says, look, in order for Hashem to create the world, I think we can all accept, regardless of how much we understand the detail, we can all accept that in order for Hashem to create the world, what Hashem had to do was downgrade the energy that he was going to share with the world. Because Hashem's energy is infinite, and you cannot express infinity into a space and then expect that what's going to happen on the other end is going to be finite. That just doesn't work that way. Or to put it into different words, if a person had to look directly at the sun, it would blind them. Now the sun is obviously only one tiny creation that Hashem made. So if we can't look directly at the sun because it could harm us, and we definitely cannot get close to the sun, because if we got close to the sun, we'd be completely incinerated. So then how much more so if we got close to Hashem? Because Hashem is infinitely more intense than the sun is. So we all acknowledge that in order for Hashem to create the world, Hashem had to filter and downgrade the intensity of his energy so that it could accommodate us. So now, here's the mind-blowing part of this. Every step along the way of this degrading or downgrading or limiting Hashem's energy means there's going to be less and less, right? Mm-hmm. So if we talk, as we do, about four spiritual worlds, diluted, exactly. So if we're going to talk about four spiritual worlds, then you have to accept that at each spiritual world there's going to be less godliness. There's going to be a downgrade of the intensity or the revelation of the godliness. Until you reach our world, that's the lowest that you can get. So this will be the most restricted version of divine revelation, is in our world. What does that mean in plain English? You don't see and you don't experience Hashem on a regular basis. If you want to experience Hashem, it's a bit abstract, it's a little bit theoretical. You've got to learn about it in a book, you've got to try and daven. But it doesn't have that, that intensity that even one level higher has. Yet, on the other hand, the Midrash tells us that the reason Hashem created the world in the first place is because Hashem wanted to have what he calls a home in the lowest worlds. So home, ironically, home is where you are yourself. Everywhere else, you have to play to a particular role. So in the office, you've got to be professional. On the sports field, you've got to be athletic. When you go out for dinner with friends, you've got to be social. When you're at the dentist, you've got to be nervous. The various things that various personas that a person has to take off at various times in life. At home, you could just be you. So Hashem's objective was that he wanted to be at home in the lowest world, which is the most unexpected outcome. Nobody would have imagined that Hashem is going to be completely free and exposed and unlimited, dafka in a finite reality. So that would be something like this. Let's try to relate it to something personal, right? Let's say that somebody's trying to build a home, because that's the metaphor. The metaphor is that Hashem wants to make a home in this world. So a person wants to build a home. There are many steps that you have to take in order to build a home. You have to first find a place, find a plot. Then you've got to get it zoned. Then you've got to put in the basic services. Then you've got to build a foundation. Then you've got to draw up plans. Before you do the foundation, you've got to draw up plans. You've got to build a foundation. You've got to start building the actual structure of the house. Then you've got to connect all the services. And then the last thing that you're going to do is you're going to move your stuff into the house. So now, at which stage of that process can you finally say, oh, my dream has come true. I fulfilled my goal. Not when you're putting the foundation, doing the zoning, drawing up the plans. It's when you put your duvet on your bed. Then you could say, oh, Baruch Hashem, your favorite armchair is in the right place. Now you could say, that's it, this is my home. So all the other steps, as important as they are, they all have a degree of frustration associated with them. Anybody who's ever done any kind of construction, you'll know how much frustration there is. So I'm frustrated because the zoning is taking longer than it should have. I'm frustrated because the architect drew up the plans and it's not exactly what I had in mind, but unfortunately it's what we have to do because of the nature of the ground. Frustrated because the builders did something wrong, they've got to tear it down and start again. It's a lot of frustration. So at which point does a person actually say, when the house is ready? So even though every single part along that path is for that purpose, every single part of the process brings with it a certain frustration. In a similar manner, when Hashem decreases the amount of energy that He's willing to share in the heavenly realms, it's frustrating. Because the net result in every one of those spiritual worlds, the net result is less. Doesn't matter that for us, from our perspective, they're great, powerful angels or spiritual beings flying around in those worlds, having amazing experiences. The reality is, the net result is there's less than there was before. The only place that doesn't happen is on earth. Why? Because now we have the home, or at least the potential for the home. Now there's a place where people can operate as Hashem intended to fulfill His mitzvahs, to actually make what Hashem's plan was. So this is the first place where, in spite of the fact that there is a net result of less, but here's the first place there's opportunity for more. There's opportunity for growth. There's opportunity for fulfilling Hashem's dream. So therefore the Alter Rebbe says, for all the spiritual realms, they only experience downgrade, and it's only in our realm that we experience the opportunity for upgrade. It's a fascinating thought. Fascinating. Which means even a neshama in Gan Eden is living in a world where the net result is spiritual downgrade, because you can't contribute, you can't do anything, you can't uplift. So where do you have the opportunity to lift the world, specifically when you can do a mitzvah, which is a physical act, which requires a human body? So all the limitations of the human body are, in fact, the reason to be able to achieve something amazing. So, the Bikurim represent us, as the Pasuk says, that we are like Hashem's first fruit. The Bikurim represent the Neshama. The Neshama is beautiful. The Neshama is the best of the best. It's hand-picked. It's got incredible opportunity, potential, etc.
What a lot of people don't like to hear, the choicest.
The choicest, yeah, exactly. The choicest. But when can a neshama achieve what a neshama needs to achieve? When it's living in a basket. If the neshama is in some big fancy gold, silver container, it's not yet living in this world. That would represent a neshama, let's say, in Gan Eden. But when the neshama is in this simple reed basket, meaning to say, when the neshama is in this very finite, limited human experience, that's when the mitzvah becomes the mitzvah. That's when the ultimate version of Bikurim happens. Because the irony of the Jewish experience is you have the greatest growth of your connection to Hashem, specifically when you're in the most simple of versions, which is the human version. Right? The neshama, free of the body, is a much more advanced version. But where do we have the ultimate experience of connection to Hashem? In the simplest version, when we're living inside the human body. And that's a very powerful lesson for us, because so often we get caught up in the frustration of, I'm not as knowledgeable as I need to be, and I'm not as spiritual as I need to be, and I'm not as focused, etc. All the various inadequacies that we focus on. And here he tells you, yes, but that's how you bring Bikurim. You bring Bikurim in a basket. And it's the simple basket that becomes part of the mitzvah, in the same way as it's the body that becomes the catalyst for our ultimate spiritual development and growth.